All right, so my name's Rob, and I'll be the trainer this afternoon, obviously. Our session today is going to be VCSAD 4A. This is the setup session for extra duty billing. There is a subsequent class called 4B that is for usage of extra duty billing. So today we'll cover how to set up various items you may use in extra duty, and then the other class will cover how you actually enter your jobs and assign people to them and do your invoicing and so on.
Okay.
So just to kind of get a feel for it, are you currently using extra duty at all, or are you just new to the extra duty portion of the program?
Brand new to everything.
Okay, very good. All right. So extra duty billing is the portion of our program that deals with outside employment, and it allows you to create a database of customers that you do outside work for. You can enter their contact information. You can enter information about what we bill those customers, what we pay officers when they use or when they work for the customer. And all of that can be used when we're entering jobs. We can then assign those jobs to certain employees. And then when it comes time, you also have the option to invoice those jobs, create an invoice to send to your customers. And we even have the ability to track receipt of payment. So if you receive a check back from that customer, we can enter that into the system so you can track the fact that that invoice was paid. Or if your department uses an escrow account, we can reflect money deposited into that escrow account and then draw from that as jobs are worked. And then finally, there's a number of reporting options that are available on different aspects of the extra duty program. So whether it be what jobs have been worked for this customer, or how many jobs has this employee worked, or what have we charged this customer, how much have we charged in admin fees, those types of reporting capabilities are available. Now, all those things are part of the system. Does not necessarily mean that you have to use them all. We have departments where maybe they take it up to the invoicing step, but then the check goes to another department, so they never actually see it, and so they don't really know when it's been paid. So they may invoice but never actually show receipt of payment, and that's fine. Same thing with, we have departments where maybe they don't process their own invoices. They just use it to track who works what jobs and to help them assign someone to a job, but then they don't actually end up generating the invoices because that may be handled by the township or something like that. So you certainly don't have to use everything, just the things that would make sense for you, and that's going to continue into our setup session. So again, because it's just you and I, we can certainly discuss certain items. If they won't be used by you, we could always ignore those items and move on to something else.
All right, sounds good.
Most everything that we do today is going to be found in the setup section. Actually, before I even get to that part, you will have either a separate icon on your desktop that looks kind of like this down here to get to extra duty, or it's also possible to have extra duty installed on a workstation in such a way that you can access it from within the main schedule app program. So you can access it from there, or you can have a separate app. So if I was somebody who was just working with extra duty, I didn't need the scheduling program at all, you could install that as a separate item. Either way, they come to this screen here when you open up the application and sign in. So from here, again, setup is where we're going to be doing most of our work for today's session. First item that we have here is update department profile. Okay, so when you open this screen up, The information here at the top is going to pull over from your main application. So whatever you have entered there, you should see here as well. Down here, there's a spot for the remit to address. So if that's the same as your main address, that's fine. You can enter it that way. Or if it's different, if when people remit their payments, they go to a different address, you can certainly enter it like that. We have two spots there for names, so you could enter the name of your organization and then maybe an attention line or a care of line, and then the additional spaces for your address information. That's necessary in order to generate an invoice because we're going to pull that information and place it on the top of your invoice. So if you plan on invoicing, you definitely want to set that portion up. At the bottom, there's an area for coordinator email. This is where we can place the email address of someone who you might identify as your extra duty coordinator. Now, probably the most used and most important feature that this email plays into is we have the ability to let officers go in and update their hours worked on a job. So if I was scheduled to work a job from 8 to 4 today, and maybe it started raining and the job ended at noon, or maybe I had to stay late, maybe I was doing security at a football game and it went into overtime, then I can either expand or reduce the number of hours that I worked. If we give the officers access to that page, then when they go in and make that change, the system will generate an email to this email address to let that person know that this officer has updated their hours. So that's probably the main thing at this point that this email is used for, and that's the kind of thing you want to consider when you decide whose email address to put in that field. Okay. At the top here, we have some tabs. Application control is next. Your scheduled dates will be pulled over from the main application. Over here, we have an area for job number and invoice number. Those are going to default to starting at, well, that'll default to 0, which means that we would start with a 1 for your first job and 1 for your first invoice. That can be adjusted, so if your department maybe has an existing numbering setup, then you can go in and enter that job number that you left off at, so you can start with the next job number. Same thing for invoicing. Otherwise, you can just leave it the way it is, and it will begin creating job numbers starting, and invoice numbers as well, starting at number 1. The next most important item here will be found under invoice options. And here you can browse to an image that meets these requirements, and you can use that image as a custom header for your invoice. So a lot of departments will point this to maybe a department emblem, insignia, badge, that type of thing, that will place that symbol at the top of your invoice, top center of your invoice. So again, you just want to make sure that the image falls into these specifications, and that will place that up at the top there. Okay, any changes you make to this screen, just make sure that you click Save at the end, and that will save those changes and close that screen for you. Any questions on any of those items, what they do or how to set them up?
No, that's pretty straightforward.
Okay, excellent. Next thing that I want to talk about is going to be update payment terms. Payment terms are where we identify how long someone has to pay, or what time frame we expect them to pay their invoice in. So I guess real quick, does your department send invoices for jobs worked, or do they collect the money in advance and hold it in escrow?
No, we send invoices.
Okay, so for you guys, this would come into play. So if we're going to send an invoice, we can identify payment terms, and that will help the system come up with a due date for when we expect them to pay by. So, maybe we say that they have 30 days to pay. So we make a description of 30 days or net 30 or however you want to phrase it. And then we enter here the number of days to add, in this case, 30. And once you've entered those items, you can hit OK. We can have as many of these as we need. So if you have different customers that have different periods of time to pay, you can create a couple different ones, 15, 30, maybe 45 is for some customers as well. And what we'll do is when you begin creating your customers, you'll be able to set the default payment terms. So what is the default for how much time we give them to pay their invoice? Okay, so that one's pretty basic as well as far as setting those up goes. Any questions on that, or what they're going to do, how we're going to use those?
No, we've never asked anybody how long or told anybody how long they have to pay. So this will be different for us.
Okay, so that may lead a conversation for what do we want to put the due date on the invoice for. Some places go with something like on receipt, and they just say, all right, just as soon as you get it, send it back to us. If you put 0 days in there, then as soon as I generate the invoice, that next day, if I ran an invoice report, it would show that invoice was late because it expected payment within a day. So, obviously the only thing that we're using that due date for on our side is just to generate a report for you showing you what's maybe past due or hasn't been paid yet.
Do something like put on receipt, but then so that's what shows up in the invoice, but then put 30 days so that it doesn't trigger the report until 30 days out.
Well, what that's going to do though is it's going to write on the invoice on receipt, but then it's going to show a due date of 30 days from when you create the invoice. That 30 days is also being used to determine the due date. So it's going to take the date it was invoiced and it's going to add that many days to it. So, I mean, you could do that. It just may, I don't know if that would be kind of the look you're going for of having it say on receipt, but then the due date is actually 30 days later. It may be just as easy to say, we expect payment within 30 days.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we'll close out of payment terms. Next item that we have here is update administration fees. So we can create admin fees, administration fees that get added to our invoice. We have a number of different charge types. So some departments might use this to say, okay, there's a car fee of, I don't know, $50 a day. Or, there's an admin fee of $5 per hour for the job, or maybe $5 per work hour, which would mean if we had 2 people on the job and the job was 4 hours, that would be 8 times 5. So this is used if you want to kind of lay out your admin fees. Now, not everybody does this. A lot do, but there's also a lot of departments that just kind of roll their admin fees into what they charge the customer. So maybe you pay the officer $40 an hour, but maybe you charge the customer, $50 an hour or $55 an hour. And maybe that extra money is just used to cover the admin fees and things like that. So if that's the way you do it, that's fine. We can also do things that way. But this is used in scenarios where you want to itemize those administration fees and kind of show what they are. Do you guys charge any admin fees, or do you just roll that into your amount that you charge the customer per person?
Yeah, we have an admin fee. I think we have a.
I'm sorry, you have an admin fee. What was the last part?
So we have an administrative fee, which is $1 a day. And we have $15 an hour for every hour for the vehicle.
Okay. So your admin fee, I think you said, was per day, correct?
No, it's per hour.
Oh, okay, I take it back. I guess it's per hour.
Oh, for the admin fee?
Yep.
Okay. So then what you would do is you would do something like this. We'd come in here, we'd hit new. You'd give it a description, whether you call it admin fee or administration fee. Administration fee. And then you'd put $10 in here, and then your charge type. That's going to be, now is that per job hour or per work hour? So again, if it's an 8-hour job and we have 2 people working it, if it's job hour, then it'll be 8 hours. If it's work hour, then it'll be 16 hours because we have 2 people there for 8 hours.
It's charged per person, so it would be $10 admin fee per hour
per hour per person. So that's going to be work hour.
Right.
So yours would be set up kind of like this: administration fee, $10 per work hour. And then you would go ahead and save that, and that'll get added to your list right here. Okay. The other one, the vehicle fee. So we'll do hit new again. So yours would be, whether you want to call it vehicle fee or car fee. And you said that was $15, right? Oops. And sorry, what's that?
That's billed up to the whole hour, but it wouldn't necessarily be the same amount of hours as what the individual worked.
Right. So this is more by job hour, I think, right? So like if the job was 8 hours and we sent 2 people but 1 car, it would be 8 hours as opposed to 16 hours, right?
Well, correct. But also, if an employee went and worked 6 hours, he would be getting paid for 8 because we pay in only 4 and 8-hour blocks. Mm-hmm. But the company is only paying for the car for the exact amount of hours that the car was used. In other words, the employee would get 8 hours of pay, but mm-hmm. the company would only have to pay 6 hours for the car.
Does the job hour get adjusted when the employee changes their actual hours worked?
The work hour will, the job hour will not, I don't believe. So I think that might still work for you. Right, because if
we enter it into the system as an 8-hour job.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So I don't think we would want to do job hour either. I think what you might actually be better off doing is just calling it per day and then there's a spot in there where you can enter quantity. And I think I would just use that quantity spot to enter the number of hours that you're going to charge for the car. So, in other words, this would be like this would go in as like a 1, so $1 $15 in this case hour. But you can go in and you can adjust that quantity and say, all right, it's actually 6 because that's how many hours we want to charge for a car. And that might be.
You probably need to do that anyway, because if we have a job where, it's 2 officers and they both take a car, job hour or even work hour, it's not gonna have 2 cars.
Yeah, I think that'll be the best bet for you, because it'll let you just manually put in the number there, and then it will calculate 15 times that number that you put in there. Okay. So again, you can enter that in there, and you'll hit save, and that'll be added there. These bottom sections here, when you first go into the system, they will be blank. They'll start to populate with the vendors that you begin entering into the system. And this can be used to identify certain vendors that have certain fees by default. So like the admin fee that you create, if you always charge that admin fee, or at least you always charge it for certain vendors, you can go in and say, okay, JCP&L always gets that charge, PSCNG always gets it, JP Construction. You can check those and you can hit apply defaults right there and then hit save. And that just means that it will automatically mark that fee when you create a job for that vendor. Now, it's just a default, it's not permanent, so if there was ever a job where you weren't going to charge that admin fee for some reason, you could always take it off. But again, if it's something that happens most of the time, it's probably easier to go in and remove it on the odd occasion that you don't have it than it would be to go in and have to mark it every single time that you use it. For something like car, that might not be something you set as a default, because that might be on a more situation by situation basis. Today they had a car, or on this one job they had a car, on this other job they didn't, something like that. Okay, so that's something you'd be able to come back and do after you enter your customers into the system.
Might be getting ahead of myself a little bit, but like on our current form, we have a box that says whether a vehicle is required or not, which kind of triggers whether they get charged the vehicle fee or not. Is there something similar to that somewhere in here, where we wouldn't necessarily always charge somebody the vehicle fee, but there's some way we can check the box and say, okay, we're requiring that they have a car for this job, so when the job does go through it.
Right. So there'll be a check that you mark to say you want to do a vehicle fee. Now, you may have to, you may be able to put in the number of hours they need a car for right away, but it's possible you may have to go back and adjust it if that changes. But yes, you'll be able to mark on a case-by-case basis, okay, this job requires a car present. Okay. Okay, so that's our admin fees. Next item here that I want to show you is update job categories. Now, it's possible for us to create different categories, and we can label certain jobs as belonging to certain categories. Now, this is mainly used for one of two things. In some places, if they are reporting their extra duty jobs to payroll through their payroll export, we may need to code certain types of jobs certain ways. So that's why we have these advanced payroll codes here. So this would allow us to say that, you know, all security jobs get code 102 and all road jobs get code 103 or something like that. So that is sometimes needed on the payroll end, these job categories, not always, but sometimes. The other scenario that it can be used for is it can be used when we're assigning jobs to someone. So we have options where we can say that we want to look at people who maybe signed up for a job, and we want to sort them by the number of hours of extra duty that they've worked, or maybe by the date last worked. So, you know, maybe we want to consider the person who has the least number of hours first, or the person who worked an extra duty job the longest time ago. By default, we consider all extra duty work, but we do have a checkbox that when we're looking at those items, we can just look at the hours or the date worked in a certain category. So example might be, maybe you divide your jobs up into like a security detail, which might be, you know, like, you know, inside at a building or something like that. Maybe you have outside jobs that are like your road jobs and so on. And, you know, maybe if it's wintertime and it's cold, you don't want to, you know, somebody who takes an outside road job, you don't want to make them last for an inside security job. So you kind of want to track them separately. So that's something that job categories can be used for. We'll look at the hours of security that you had if we're trying to fill a security job, or the hours of road jobs that you've had if we're trying to fill a road job. Same thing with date last worked. We look at the last time you worked a security job or the last time you worked a road job. We can look at them individually. So those are the main two uses for job categories. There's also some minor reporting options that you can do with them as well. Now, they're not required fields when you create a job, so you don't have to mark all jobs with a category. You don't have to mark any job with a category. If there's no need for you from a payroll standpoint, and if there's no need from a distribution of hours standpoint, you can leave that field blank and just choose not to set that up. Okay. So hearing all that, does it sound like job categories play into anything that your department does?
Not in the way that you're describing. Just I would probably make two, one for security and one for traffic control.
Okay. All right, perfect. So what you'll do is you'll just hit new here. You're going to give it a code. I would probably keep it around maybe 12 characters at the most. I think it actually will let you go longer, but sometimes that causes problems when we're pulling certain reports. I don't know if they've put a cap on that yet. So, and I would keep it, you know, on the lower side if possible. And then your description, you can be up to 25 characters. That's not an issue there. So, you know, I mean, as an example here, code of security and description is security as well. And then just hit save. Okay. Okay, next handful of items here, update your ranks, your squads, your skill sets. Those items are just really pulling same screens from schedule app. In other words, if I needed to create a new rank or title for someone, I could create it from here. These are mostly used if a department only had extra duty and needed these screens to be able to set up their program. The next big item here would be update officers. Now again, this pulls a lot of information in from your department or your officer profile. But the main thing to point out here is there is a spot for extra duty rate. Now, when you are paying on your jobs, is it something where like anybody who works a job gets the same pay, or is it based on their regular hourly salary? Like, is it a time and a half situation, or is it some other, number that they use to decide what their pay is?
Yeah, they all get the same. Everybody gets the same pay. We have a variation depending on when the job gets called in.
Okay. Okay. So, but as far as people go, officers, they get the same regardless. Then I mean they get the same as each other. In other words, it's more based on the job itself, not the individual. So I don't think you'll need to worry about filling out this extra duty rate then, because we'll enter the information at the job level as to how much they're going to get paid. So that's probably all we need to worry about here at this point. So we can probably skip past that as well. The next couple of items here have to do with how we assign people to jobs. So currently, are you in a situation where you're like posting jobs and people sign up for them, or are you getting the information and making phone calls to people? How are you distributing these jobs now?
It depends on. We have a card file, so there's rotation, which is overly complex. But if it's called in a certain number of hours in advance, it gets posted on the board for people to sign up. If it's shorter, if it's inside of 48 hours, then we have to call everybody on the phone. Okay.
Now, if it's in advance and you post it, and I don't know, 4 people sign up for it, how do you decide who gets it? Is that based on first come, first serve, or?
We have to go through the recipe box with everybody's name, so we have to go through the rotation. So if you haven't signed up for it, we assume that you're a no, and you can go back to the box until we reach somebody that did sign up for it.
Okay. So, all right, so you're still pretty much using the rotation, and you're bumping people to the back until you get to somebody who signed up for it.
More or less.
Okay. All right. So, so as part of that, you're going to create an overtime list. Now, my position on the short notice list, is that the same as on the advance notice list?
Yeah, there's only one. It's literally a recipe box.
Okay.
Cards in it.
Gotcha. Okay. So then you're going to go to update overtime lists, and you're going to create a list for us to be able to use to cycle through your employees. Most likely, you call it whatever, extra duty list or extra jobs list, or whatever it might be, and you will go ahead. You'll hit new here. You'll type the name in this area here. And then you'll just go through and you'll mark the people who belong on that list. So, like, who are the people that we want to include when we are either making this phone calls or cycling through the advance notice list. Just mark them with a checkbox, and once you're done, you're going to hit save over here. Okay, and that will create the list. That'll put the people's names on the list, and then in the next step, we'll look at how we can identify what order they should be in. Okay. So once you've got your list created, you'll go back under Setup to Update Overtime Selection Order. and that will let us choose our list from here. And the only thing that you will want to be concerned with here is going to be the sort order field. Okay, sort order is what position they are going to be in on the list. Okay, so I can go over here and I can hit, under global changes, I can hit clear. Are you sure you want to clear the sort order? We'll say yes, and that will blank the sort order out. Now I can go in with my recipe box and I can say, okay, you're supposed to be number 1. You're the, you're the first person up. You're the second person up, third, fourth, and so on, until you have everybody with a number. Now, that obviously becomes very important when you're ready to start using this as your go-to method. If you're just kind of getting things entered in here and getting a feel for things, if you put the numbers in correctly now, but you don't use this for 2 weeks, obviously people's numbers are going to be out of position. So for the time being, you could just, sort this by seniority or whatever you want to do with it, and then just hit auto set. And that will just give everybody a number to kind of get us started here. And then you can always come back later and reset it with people's information later. Okay, so that may be good just for just to hold you over for now. Just hit auto set, give everybody a number, and hit save. Okay, we can close out of there. Okay, and because you are going to be using the rotating call list, you will also want to make sure that you do update phone pad controls, also under setup. Now, are you using a kind of a similar list and rotation type setup for your department overtime as well?
I haven't set that up yet.
Okay.
But yeah, probably.
Okay.
It's a lot simpler for overtime than it is for road jobs.
Gotcha. Well, the only reason that I ask is you're going to fill out, if you're doing it based on a rotating list on the department stuff, you're going to be using these same buttons here. So if you've already set them up in the main application, you might already see some information here. Now, some departments, the same thing happens when somebody accepts a regular overtime and accepts an extra duty. And if that's the case, that's fine. You don't have to redo the buttons. You can leave them the way that they are. But some departments, you might have one set of buttons for regular jobs and one set of buttons for extra duty. So I'll explain how the buttons work. They're going to be laid out like a phone pad. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, and then 10, 11, 12. Help text is what will appear on the button itself. So the first button right now would say accept, decline, and left message. Log text is what will be written to a fairness activity log. So whenever we click that button, it will write that information to a log. And then action is what do we do with that person when we click this button. So you have a couple of options here. Accept means that we're going to go ahead and mark them as taking that job. Deny and excuse, they pretty much do the same thing. They just move on to the next person. It's just a different item that's placed in the log using that as well. So again, if they say no, we might want to make that deny. And if there's some reason where they're excused, we can leave one as excused as well. a very important item here, the last item, send to end. This determines whether, when we click that button, do we move that person to the bottom of the list or to the back of the recipe box. So if I take the job, and if that moves me to the bottom of the list, then you want to make sure you put a check in the box like we have here. If I say no to the job, or if I didn't choose to sign up for it, if it was a job that was posted, then I can put a check in the box, and that will send that person to the end as well. If there's any reason where you might excuse someone and skip their name and not move them to the bottom of the list, you want to make sure you leave that block unchecked for that button. Okay. Once you have these filled out, you're going to click Save over here, and then they will be available when you go to run your lists. Okay. Any questions about those buttons or how to set them up or what they do?
That part makes sense. So where does this show up? Is this like on a supervisor's screen where they're calling on the phone answering, or is this when? Yeah.
So what you'll do is either you can actually do it either way. You can either if it's a calling situation where it's last minute, or if I want to take the list of people who signed up, or I want to take the list of everybody and just make note of who signed up and just work my way through the list. Either way, they're going to get those buttons available there. So you'll have the person's name, you'll have their contact information, and then you'll have the buttons available. And if you hit, let's say, decline, deny action, or an excused action, that'll just move you down the list to the next person, whereas the accept action will mark that person as being someone who's going to take the job.
That doesn't automatically assign them just because they, like if they're putting them signing up for it on the open jobs list, that doesn't necessarily automatically assign them.
That's right. We have an immediate award function, but it sounds like that's not something you'll use. So the employee will just enter their interest in the job by signing up for it, and then somebody will go in and take that list of people and kind of work their way down, maybe through people who did not sign up for it, until they get to somebody who did sign up for it, and then they can award it to them.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. All right, so those will be your phone pad controls. Other item that we have here is update work rules. So if we choose not to set up your work rules, well, actually, let me change that. Work rules are ways we can identify certain people who maybe should not be assigned to work a certain job. So, we can identify if we want to eliminate people who are already working. Do we want to eliminate people who maybe have too many hours in a certain period of time, or too many consecutive hours down here without enough rest, or some departments even have restrictions based on certain types of time off, right? If I was on a sick day, maybe I have 12 hours after that before I can work an extra duty job again. So we can set up certain rules like that. Now that will begin to filter people out of your call list. So some places prefer to not filter people out of the call list because maybe even if you don't, maybe even if you are working your regular shift that time, maybe we still offer it to you, in case maybe, I don't know, you want to comp out and take the job or something like that. So
we probably wouldn't. The only thing I see on here is I've checked the box to allow probationary officers to work extra duty and the other one, allow employees to be assigned if working.
Okay, so, well, and what you can do is instead of using these things, you can, we don't have to worry about, actually, hold on, let me think. Yeah, because I think it defaults to not showing them. So yeah, so what you'll want to do for your rules here is just mark these two items. Sounds like you won't want to bother with any of these, and then you would just hit save. Okay, so that would allow all people on that list to show up when you ran your call list. Okay, right? You said, oh, the other ones you probably would not use at this point.
No, I mean, we've had an issue in the past with the number of consecutive hours worked. But I don't want to filter, like you say, it's going to start taking people off the rotation, so I don't want to.
Right. Right, so if we filter their name out of the rotation, then they maintain their spot, and, next time you go to run it, they would be presumably at the top of the list or, up towards the top. And what you can do is you can certainly leave it off for now. If you think it's something that you need, you would just put the number of consecutive hours and then the number of hours of rest required after. So in this case here, after 16 consecutive hours, you got to have 8 hours of rest. Okay. Okay, so that takes care of most of our setup items here that you would need to get yourself started. The last piece of setup is not under the setup section, it's actually under customer. And that's where we can go in to enter or update customer profiles. So this is how we start building our library or database of customers that we do jobs for. Now, you'll probably want to go in and enter at least a few. Some departments may have somebody sit down and just enter them all in. Other departments, kind of as they come up, they add customers in here just a little bit at a time. It's entirely up to you. Just know that if you're going to enter a job for a customer, they do have to already be in the system. We have to choose a customer when creating a job, so they'll have to be in there already. When you come into this screen here, you'll hit New, and you'll begin filling the information out here. Code is up to, I think, 12 or 15 characters. That's usually like an abbreviation for that customer. Or some departments maybe have like, a numbering system where they number their customers. You could use that there as well. This is not something that I would have to know to identify the customer. You will be able to see the name of the customer as well. This is more what the database uses to identify that customer. So, for example, if the customer was Central High School, maybe my code is CHS or something like that, or maybe it's a part of the customer's name. If you have an AMC theater in town and they get security on Friday and Saturday nights, maybe the code is just AMC or something like that. Anything that's unique to that customer. Name is where you would spell out the name of the organization. So. And then your address, whatever that might be here. And you'll see it's going to start to fill out your bill to address for you down here. Okay, so that's going to be placed on your invoices when you create them. You can also put in a contact person. And then you have a spot for a phone number, a fax number, and an email if you want to enter that information there. Phone and fax are informational. They're certainly fine to enter if you have them. Email, we do have the ability to email invoices to customers, either in addition to or instead of sending them a paper copy. There's additional email options I know in the works for extra duty where we can notify the customer when certain things happen, like receipt of payment and things along those lines. Okay.
We have some situations where the company requesting isn't necessarily the billing.
Company requesting isn't necessarily the company billing.
We get RH White Construction is calling, but they're doing construction for Eversource Gas, and Eversource Gas is who's going to end up getting the bill for it.
I think in that scenario, I would put it in as a job for Eversource Gas, and then when you enter the job information, there's a spot for description of the job and location of the job. So I think I might use those fields to maybe indicate like who it is that you're working for, working with at that point, because you're going to want the customer to be accurate, so that way your billing information is accurate. So I think you're better off maybe entering that into description and or location. Okay. Web access. This is something that we're adding functionality to, where we could allow customers to go in and request jobs through the web. It's not fully functional yet. We're in the process of creating that, but you could let your customer go in, sign in, put all the information in for a job, and then either have it auto-publish, if it's a trusted vendor and you just want it to automatically go and be added to the list of jobs, or you set it to not auto-publish and then, notifies the coordinator. They go in, they see the job in there, they review it, and then they go ahead and publish it when they're ready. Again, not quite there yet, but that's what that piece is for. It's something that we're building into the system. So that's our general information. Under payment information, first section here is our default charge fee. What do we charge? What's the default amount that we charge the customer? So if it's a flat rate, we mark flat rate and we enter what we charge that customer per hour. Same thing with paid officer. Now, in your case, if you pay that full amount to the officer, you would mark flat rate and you would enter that amount there. Now, these are just defaults, so it's okay if in certain situations the pay amount is adjusted. You can do that when you enter the job. Just I would go with whatever the most common charge fee and pay to officer is. Okay. We have spots here for account numbers and advanced payroll codes. Those are sometimes used if we are reporting to payroll and we need certain codes based on the customer that the job was worked for. You can usually leave those blank. If we need them, you can always go back and add them later.
What if I have more than one pay rate for a particular job?
For a particular job?
Yeah, so if the job goes over 8 hours, then it becomes time and a half the extra duty rate.
Okay. You can, those are like adjustments that someone who has like, permissions in the extra duty program could make changes to. So, maybe you have to add some hours for the employee and adjust the rate for those hours. You can do that. So the same employee might get $40 an hour for the first 8 hours, and then might go up to $60 an hour for the next 2 hours. Okay. Payment terms is where we put our default payment terms. So obviously we built these earlier. So whatever we normally would, whatever time frame we would normally give them to pay, we would choose that. And then payment method sounds like for you guys, it's going to just be invoice. Okay. So those are just some default pieces of information that you can set up, and then when we go to create the jobs, it's going to pull all that information over. Now, they can be tweaked if need be, if something is different for a certain job, but our hope is that most of the time you don't have to do that, so it saves you some data entry when you have a new job to put in. Okay, so once you've entered the information here on the General tab and the Payment Information tab, then we're just going to go ahead and hit Save. And that will give us a blank screen again to continue entering. And that will add that customer to our list. I can always go in and adjust this as well if need be. So if I have to go in and the contact person changes, or I just found out their email, I can go in and add that information and save it. Okay. Any questions on entering customer information? What we put in there, what it's used for, anything along those lines?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so that's the last setup item for the Extra Duty program itself. There's one more thing that I'll show you that you can set up, and that is actually found in the program, the main program itself. So I'm going to go into the main application here, and I'm going to sign in. And if you're going to begin using Extra Duty, one thing that you may want to do is add an Extra Duty tile to one or more of your tile profiles in the system here. Okay, so we have our home profile here, and we can add a tile that covers Extra Duty information. We actually already have one here. If I go down to my tabs, I have Extra Duty assignment, Extra Duty tab here. So what I'll do is I'll actually go in and I will delete this tab. And I'll show you from scratch. So I find where I want to add this information, which profile I want to add it to. And I click the Edit Dashboard button. And that brings us into our edit mode, which is, we can tell based on the kind of bluish color that we have on our tiles here. Now it's up to you. You may want to just stick this somewhere in an existing tab. I tend to like to put it in its own tab so it has a little bit of room to it. So to add a new tab at the bottom here, I'm going to go and I'm going to click Add Tab on our sidebar here. And we're going to give it a name. So I'll call it Extra Duty. And we have a brand new clean area here to work with. Now we have two different Extra Duty tabs. I usually cut this horizontally because both of these tiles that have to do with Extra Duty, they're kind of set up in a horizontal fashion. So I usually split it this way. And to fill this space, I click the green button right here. And the first one I want to show you is called Extra Duty Assignment. So I see it on the sidebar right here, and I click on it. And this is a tile that would show me Extra Duty jobs that were out there. And if anyone had been assigned to them, I would see their name underneath that job as well. So I can choose to use the timer to have it, refresh on its own. I usually recommend not leaving it at 30 seconds because it's kind of often and it may be refreshing too soon for you. I actually like to just pop a 0 on there and go for 300 seconds, which is every 5 minutes, which is usually more than enough. We can add a title that will show in this area here. So maybe I call it extra, oops. Maybe I call it extra duty or extra duty assignments. And I can choose to give that tile a certain font to it. I usually go with like bold and maybe 10. And then here we can identify, do I want to look any days in the past or in the future? If we leave these as 0s, that means that this tile is just looking at today's date. So if I only want to see who's working an extra duty job on the current day's date, I can leave that the way it is. If I want to include some days in the future, I could put a number here, right? If I put 7, that's going to look from today and include the next 7 days worth of jobs on it. Sometimes that gets a little busy if you put too many days on there. I think people tend to more often just leave this to be what's going on with today as far as extra duty assignments go. And when I'm done setting these up, I hit apply and use, and that will put that tile into that area there. The other tile, you set it up pretty similarly. If you want to use it, you click the green button here. Extra duty signups. This is going to show me anybody who has signed up for an extra duty job. When the job is, when they, who it's for, and so on. So if you're posting jobs for people to sign up for them, this may be helpful. If you're the person who's in charge of like assigning those jobs, you can kind of see, who is signed up. The other one is usually a little more useful for more people, including like supervisors who maybe want to see what's going on that day. But again, this is great if I want to see who has signed up for certain jobs. So I can turn on my timer, I can set my refresh rate, and I can give it a title. Can adjust my font. And once again, I can adjust my dates here. Maybe I want to look a couple days or include information from a couple days in the future, so that way I can kind of see ahead what what jobs have been signed up for and so on. And again, I hit apply and use, and that will place that tile in there. And when I'm done, I can exit edit mode. This will just ask me, do I want to keep the changes that we made? We'll say yes. And that's now a new tab in my profile. Okay, so there's some examples of people who signed up for extra duty jobs. Find anybody who's assigned to one. There you go. So there's an extra duty job, and there's the people who, were assigned to it. It's already been invoiced here, as you can see. But that's how those tiles work. So if you're planning to begin using extra duty, those tiles might be helpful to get you some information while you're in Schedule app. Okay. Any questions about adding those tiles or what they show?
No, I already put that on my, I don't know, I haven't had anything to put on it to test it yet.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, they're already there. So once you start entering information, that stuff will start to populate on there. Okay. Okay, so those are all of our setup items for extra duty. Any questions on anything that we've set up or looked at here for setup, or anything you need me to go over an additional time?
Let me just check my side and make sure.
Sure.
I've had a couple issues with some things not updating. I guess looks like it's gone over the way it's supposed. I just had a couple problems with things being it either using schedule app and it wasn't going over into the web portal or vice versa. So
Okay.
while I had you on the phone, I want to make sure that was
Absolutely.
yeah, we should be square with that.
Awesome. Okay. Very good. I also noticed, I think that you're signed up for a training help out at 3:30.
Yes, is that you?
It can be. If you just want to continue this session and we can take a look at that stuff, if you just give me 1 second to just let everybody else know to make sure nobody else tries to sign on and take that, because you'll be on with me. All right?
Sure.
All right, so I'll be back in a minute, all right?
Sure.
Okay, you there?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I just want to make sure that somebody else didn't grab that and sitting there waiting for somebody to sign on. Okay, so we're good with extra duty. I'll close out of that.
Right.
All right. And actually, what I normally do for a help out is I normally, if you have the program on the computer that you're on, I usually make you the presenter. That way we can actually work in your program. Does that work for you?
Yes, that's fine.
All right. So I'm going to log off here. And I am going to make you the presenter. And request keyboard and mouse. There we go. All right, so I can see your screen, and I can move the mouse if I need it. Okay. Okay, so I think it said something about questions about holiday rules, maybe?
Yes. So, two main questions. So, the first one being is for our dispatchers and our police officers. I'll go to, we have the, I guess what you would call the minor holidays, which would be like Columbus Day, where if they work, they're just getting time into their bank.
Okay.
As opposed to a major holiday, which would be Thanksgiving or Christmas, where they're getting paid time and a half for working the holiday, but they're also going to bank hour for hour time in their holiday bank. And I wasn't sure how we can.
So if I work the holiday, I get an extra payment plus time gets put into my holiday bank.
Correct. My first thought was to create a second Thanksgiving under this work group.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I would check is apply to working employees and make the payment type 1.0 time, holiday time. So there would be two rules for that one day.
Well, the only problem with that is I don't think it'll let you save more than one rule on the same day. I think the date is like the unique code in the database, so I don't think you can have two on the same day. I'm going to grab control real quick. I'm going to hit new here. And 11/24, 2016. Yeah, okay, that's kind of what I thought. Now, for your Thanksgiving rule, for the people that are not working, they get time in their bank?
No. That's only, it was described to me if they take time off, so if they, for whatever reason, somebody took a vacation time,
Gotcha.
comp time or whatever on Thanksgiving, they would bank hour for hour holiday time.
So if it's my RDO, nothing. It's only if I'm working or if I was supposed to work and I'm taking time off.
Correct.
That's a good one. I think I haven't had an instance where I have had two rules quite like that on the same day. I may need to kick that around with somebody to see if there's any way we can kind of mimic that. So it's now the people who take time off, do they just get the time in their bank or do they get the extra pay as well?
No, they just get the time in their bank.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna have to think about that one. I don't. Yeah, I don't. I don't know what I can do with that. I'm gonna have to play around with that.
The other question I had with regards to holiday pay is we have, so right now I have the work group set up by the union.
Mm-hmm.
But for police officers that are in administrative assignments, there are a couple instances like this upcoming January 1st is on a Sunday.
Okay.
For officers that are on patrol or in what they would call an essential assignment, the holiday gets accrued on the actual day on January 1st. But for officers in an administrative assignment, their holiday is going to be January 2nd. Do I have to create another work group, or is there a way around that?
No, we'd have to put them in a separate work group because it would have to be a separate rule. Otherwise, it's, it'll happen to everybody on the 1st and everybody on the 2nd. So the way that we divide people up like that would be to put them into a separate work group.
Okay.
Now, for the people that get it on the 2nd, are they getting the day off or are they accruing something?
Well, they would generally get so they're automatically scheduled for the day off, but then if they did work, then they would get hour for hour.
Right.
And then they run into that same scenario. They would get, on the major holidays, they would get time and a half and then bank hour for hour.
That would be if they actually worked, but the default would be that they would be off, right? So like if we took Christmas for example, they're going to be scheduled off for Christmas unless something happened where they had to come work.
Right.
Right. So in that scenario, we would probably set the rule up to just give them the day off because that's the most common scenario. And then if they actually came into work, you may have to just enter 2 overtime entries, one to give them their extra pay and one to give them their time in their bank, on the chance that happened. But the rule, the default scenario is that they get the day off.
So I'm trying to remember back to that thing. So let's say I create this rule for Thanksgiving for the administrative folks. I would check the box for apply day off at the bottom. Yeah. Would it mess things up if I check the apply to working employees section also?
Well, what's going to happen is these rules don't run until the wee hours of the morning after the holiday passes. So we don't want to create an overtime entry for someone for 2 months from now for Christmas because their schedule may change, something may happen, they may not be in that work group anymore or whatever. So we don't do that until after it passes. For time off, when the rules check tonight, it's going to mark them as a day off tonight. So we'll mark the time off in advance. We just won't create the overtime entry in advance. So what that means is if we mark this and this, tonight it's going to give them the day off. By the time that day gets here, they're going to be on that day off. This will never happen. Only this might happen. Now, if it did, they would get the day off, and we would put time into their bank.
So I'd want to, okay. So I would need to check the applied day off on the bottom, and then this applied employees taking time off. But now, what happens if they pull an overtime shift for that day? Do I need to have working employees checked?
No, that would just be a manual overtime entry. So if I was supposed to be off today and you called me in on overtime, you would just put that in as an overtime entry.
Those are my two main two questions for that.
Okay. For that other thing, I can definitely look into that. I'm not sure, if we can run two sets of rules on that. That's what I'm gonna have to look into. I mean, I know we can't run them on the same day. I'm trying to think if there's any other way that we can kind of process that.
Under payment type, there's no way to split. That was so long ago. Is there?
No, I mean the payment type is either cash or it's pay. The reason I asked about the people, if everybody got time in their bank, and just the people who are working got the cash, what I have seen done is we run the time earned, maybe the day before Thanksgiving. So, because everybody gets it anyway, so we don't care who's actually working that day itself, and then for the cash we run that on Thanksgiving. But that wouldn't work for you guys because the only people that get the time in their bank would be people who are scheduled to work and either are working or have taken time off that day. So
but the time or the rule gets applied like early in the morning the day after the holiday, right?
Correct. So like this is Thursday, November 24th, so like early morning November 25th, that will go through and create all these overtime entries.
Well, I don't want to stop you from seeing if we can figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But so if I had to, I guess I could make time accrual like the next day. Of course, I'd have to get that agreed upon with the unions to say basically you won't get your time for 24 hours.
Well, the only thing I'm concerned with that is couldn't different people be working? Like I don't know how your schedules go, but like so if we set one rule for December 24th and the second rule for November, and you already have a rule for November 25th anyway, but let's use Christmas as an easier example. If we had one rule for 12/25 and one rule for 12/26, the 12/25 rule, that creates the overtime entries for the pay. The 12/26 rule, we say, okay, give everybody who's working that day time in their bank, but it's possible that, depending on how your rotations fall, it might be different people working on the 26th. So I don't know if that would work for you. That really is I've only seen that work before in a situation where everybody got the time for the holiday, whether they worked or not. At that point, we didn't care what day you were working; you were getting it anyway.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work.
So
brainstorm.
No, that's what I'm trying to do, and it's I'm going to ask some people if they've ever had an option like that, or an item like that where they've had to kind of had two different items applied. So I'll see if there's anything I can figure out. I'm not sure. I mean, it may be that one of them has to be a manual entry. I don't know, but I'll see what I can come up with.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I got some notes on that. Okay. Anything else? Any other holiday questions or any other questions for now?
The only thing that came up today that I just noticed, and I don't know if this is more of a tech support thing, is I lost my extra duty bill.
Are you on the workstation that you normally sign in on?
Yep.
Let me grab control real quick. So it's definitely there. I'm just going to go into your local drive here. program files. Whoops. Oops, it's actually right here, isn't it?
Yeah, last time somebody went into my configuration files, I ended up with two icons, and one goes to a updating or something.
Actually, are you using your own login yet?
That's what I was in.
All right, let's go ahead and have you log in with that. There we go.
It seems a little faster from there than it does when you click the icon on the desktop for whatever reason. But
yeah, that's just, I think I mentioned at the beginning of the extra duty portion that's just like a matter of how it's set up there. So it can be freestanding, or if I just move that executable into the folder there, you can run it through here. So you should be good on that now.
Cool.
All right.
That's one less thing on the to-do list.
Perfect.
Yeah, so you get back to me on this holiday thing, and I'll get to plugging in all this stuff on extra duty billing.
All right. Excellent. Very good. And don't forget, there's a follow-up class. Actually, I think there's one tomorrow. If you want to take that about how to actually run, put in the job and run extra duty and so on. That's that advanced training 4B.
Yes, we are signed up for it. So if that's
Okay.
you,
Excellent. It's probably going to be either me or Josh. I'm not sure which one it'll be, but it'll be one of us.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right.
Good.
All right. Great. Well, if that's all you have today, I'll go ahead and close out the session, and you should be getting that recording email pretty soon after.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.